Good morning, everyone. So I hope you enjoy the cultural activities last night, right? So for those who are waiting for the portraits that we all together try to draw it last night. So I think after this talk, we will bring it and show it here in this room. And you will be surprised that how excellent or how beautiful of the portraits that we together draw it last night. And some of you that like to try the Muay Thai last night as well. And myself, I also joined the Muay Thai session. I feel very bad today, so it's too heavy for me. I'm getting old now. But I do hope that you guys enjoy the night, okay? And actually, this morning we have special lectures by one of the Nobel laureates, Professor Kajita from Japan. And I think maybe in 1 or 2 minutes we will start the sessions. And I would like to let you know that this morning, not just you or we here at this room, we also have our friends from 4 provinces of Isan, consisting of Nakhon Ratchasima province, Buriram province, and Chayaprum province, and also Surin province. There are 1,000 students joining us this morning, and we will have the live broadcasting from this room to another big room we call Sura Samanakan 2. And of course, we also give the opportunity to our friends, 1,000 students to join us for the morning session as well. Okay? Now, I think it should be a good time that I should introduce our speaker. And good morning to our students, team leaders, and distinguished guests. It is my great honor to introduce a truly remarkable figure in the world of physics, Professor Takaaki Kajita. Professor Kajita's journey is a powerful reminder of where curiosity and dedication can take us. After earning his PhD in physics from the University of Tokyo in 1986, he devoted his career to uncovering the secrets of the universe, focusing on one of the most mysterious particles known to science, the neutrino. Working with the Kamiokande and super Kamiokande detectors in Japan, Professor Kajita and his team made a groundbreaking discovery that changed physics forever. In 1998, they presented the first clear evidence of neutrino oscillation, the phenomenon where neutrinos change from one type to another as they travel. This discovery proved something no one had been able to confirm before. Neutrinos actually have mass, even though it is incredibly tiny. This finding was a game changer. It challenged the very foundation of the standard model of particle physics and forced scientists around the world to rethink their understanding of matter itself. For this historic achievement, Professor Kajita was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2015. But his contributions to science didn't stop there. He has served as the director of the Institute of Cosmic Ray Research at the University of Tokyo, led the Science Council of Japan, and also he is the principal investigator for the KAGRA gravitational wave project, continuously pushing the boundary of human knowledge. Today, we are truly privileged to have such a visionary scientist with us. His work not only deepens our understanding of the universe, but also inspires us to keep asking questions and exploring the unknown. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Professor Takaaki Kajita.
Good morning. I'm very glad to be here. And from now on, I want to talk about discovery of neutrino oscillations. In fact, neutrinos are subatomic particles, and we have been working on neutrinos for a long time. So today, I'm going to talk about our studies of neutrinos. Oh, by the way, in this slide, you see a photo. This is the inside of the super Kamiokande detector. And we have been working with this detector for many years. Okay, this is the outline of this talk. First, I want to give you a brief introduction on myself. Then, I want to move on to what are neutrinos, early days, discovery of neutrino oscillations, discovery of solar neutrino oscillations. And I want to talk about the importance of small neutrino mass. And before finishing, I just want to briefly discuss what I am doing now. And I will summarize this talk. Okay, let's begin. Well, I understand some of you are high school students. Therefore, I decided to include this slide. Well, I was a student at Kawagoe High School, which is a local high school near Tokyo. Anyway, I enjoyed the high school life. And as a student of local high school, I played Japanese archery as an extracurricular activity. But of course, as high school students, I have to think about the future. So when I was a third-year student, I thought seriously what I should learn in undergraduate course. And in the end, I decided to learn physics. And well, anyway, here I show a photo of our Japanese archery club. We enjoyed this activity very much. Now, okay, after high school, I enrolled in Saitama University, which is again a local national university near Tokyo. And I thought that some lectures in physics were inspiring. Well, although I thought I should learn physics, I was more involved in Japanese archery club of the university. And here I show my photo in Japanese archery club. Well, indeed, I was deeply involved in the Japanese archery club. But again, well, at the end, I have to think about the future. Therefore, before the end of my third year, I decided to go to graduate course and to study physics seriously. In fact, it was not an easy decision because I was involved in the Japanese archery club heavily. Anyway, as I wrote here, very fortunately, Professor Koshiba of the University of Tokyo accepted me as a graduate course student in his group at the Department of Physics of the University of Tokyo. By the way, I'd like to introduce Professor Koshiba. Well, from now on, I'm going to talk about the Kamiokande experiment. And the Kamiokande experiment was proposed by Professor Koshiba, and he was the leader of this experiment. And in fact, due to the observation of neutrinos from supernova SN 1987A, he received Nobel Prize in Physics in 2002. So I was really fortunate to have my advisor as Professor Koshiba. Well, okay, here I want to very briefly summarize my research history. Well, I enrolled in graduate course in 1981. Then immediately after that, I joined the Kamiokande experiment. And I worked in Kamiokande for some years. Then I moved on to the Super Kamiokande experiment. Both are famous as neutrino experiments. Then in 2008, I became the director of our institute, Institute for Cosmic Ray Research. And I had to change my research style. And at that point, I decided to change my research from neutrino physics to gravitational waves. And since then, I'm involved in the Kagura gravitational wave project. Okay. Now, I also want to show you the site for these experiments, Kamiokande, Super Kamiokande, and Kagura. Anyway, I have been working in this place. So you see, this is a little bit far from Tokyo. And also you notice this must be a mountain area. Yes. Well, I have been working in underground in a mountain in that area. And in the right, I show an underground map. So in this mountain, there are several experiments. One is Super Kamiokande, and another one is Kagura. Also, well, in fact, in this slide, there is no Kamiokande, but, well, Kamiokande used to be here. So, over the 40 years, more than 40 years, I worked in this place. Okay, let's begin. What are neutrinos? From now on, I'm going to talk about our neutrino studies. In fact, well, let me begin with the birth of neutrinos. In the early 20th century, physicists were puzzled with beta decays. Well, here I showed an image of beta decay. A nucleus emits an electron, and the nucleus changes to other nucleus. Well, okay, this was the image people had in early 20th century. And if this image is correct, then we expect that the energy of an electron should be a unique one. You can calculate the energy of the electron, kinetic energy of the electron. Anyway, we expect unique kinetic energy for an electron. However, as shown here, the energy of an electron was not a unique one. Instead, people found that the energy had a continuous spectrum. Well, as I said, the energy should be a unique one, but the observed energy had a continuous one. So people were really puzzled. Then, on December 4th, 1930, Pauli wrote a letter to dear radioactive ladies and gentlemen. Well, in this letter, he mentioned, in order to understand the puzzle of the beta decay, you should assume another particle, neutral particle, that is emitted together with the electron. So, as written here, if a nucleus emits an electron and at the same time a new particle is emitted, then one can naturally explain the continuous energy spectrum. So, this was the initial idea on neutrinos. By the way, well, Pauli wrote a letter to the radioactive ladies and gentlemen. That meant, well, he was invited to a conference, but he was unable to attend that conference. Therefore, he wrote a letter to the attendees of the conference. So that was the birth of the neutrinos. Now, since I do not have much time to talk about the detailed history of neutrinos, I would like to summarize what do we know about neutrinos. Okay, this is the brief summary of neutrinos. Neutrinos are fundamental particles like electrons and quarks. But, well, still, you may not have image on neutrinos. So I want to say that neutrinos are something like electrons, but without electric charge. This is important. Now, since neutrinos have no electric charge, therefore neutrinos does not feel electromagnetic forces. Therefore, even if a neutrino come to a matter, they do not feel electric field, therefore simply pass through the matter. Therefore, neutrinos can easily pass through even the Earth. But fortunately, they can interact with matter very rarely. In addition, I just want to tell you that neutrinos have three types or three flavors, namely electron neutrinos, muon neutrinos, and tau neutrinos. Finally, I just want to mention that neutrinos have been assumed to have no mass. Then you may wonder, how can we detect neutrinos? Okay, here I wrote an image of a neutrino detection. First of all, we can never see neutrinos themselves. But a neutrino may interact with the nucleus, although it's very rare, but anyway, a neutrino may interact with the nucleus. Then, in this case, charged particle is emitted. Well, we have various ways to observe charged particles. For example, if the nucleus is a water nucleus, say oxygen, no, H2O, then this charged particle should propagate in the water. Then this particle emit light or photons. Of course, we have various ways to observe light. We have camera. Anyway, well, there are various photodetectors, and in fact, if we have a very sensitive photodetector, we can observe these faint light. Then, by analyzing this light, we can understand that at that moment, charged particles propagate in the water, and that means at that moment, a neutrino interact with the nucleus. So this way, we can detect neutrinos. Okay, from now on, I want to move on to our experiment. First, I want to talk about the Kamiokande experiment. Let me begin with the story about 50 years ago. In the 1970s, new theories of elementary particles appeared, and these theories predicted that protons should decay with a lifetime of about 10 to 30 years. Well, first of all, the lifetime of 10 to 30 years is very, very long. We know the age of the universe is about 13.8 billion years. That is about 10 to 10 years. So, 10 to 30 years is longer than the age of the universe by 20 orders of magnitude. So, extremely long. Therefore, well, even if protons decay, it does not affect our life. But physicists thought, this prediction is extremely important in order to verify the new theories of elementary particles. Therefore, several proton decay experiments began in the early 1980s, and one of them was the Kamiokande experiment. And here, I show the sketch of the Kamiokande experiment. It was located in deep underground, and it had about 16 meters in diameter and 16 meters high, and it contained 3,000 tons of very clean water. The idea was, so in 3,000 tons, there are many protons. Therefore, one of the protons in 3,000 tons of water may decay at that time, finishing the life of that proton. Then, in this case, we expect 2 or 3 particles are emitted, and these particles emit photons. Therefore, we wanted to observe these photons with these photodetectors. So that was the idea. We really wanted to observe the moment that proton decays or proton dies. Anyway, I was fascinated by the concept of proton decay and participated in Kamiokande. At the time, I became a graduate course student, and that was April 1981. Well, I showed a sketch of the Kamiokande experiment. And well, in fact, this kind of big experiment we have to construct. Therefore, in the spring of 1983, we came to the experimental site and started the construction of the experiment. And this photo shows the members of the Kamiokande experiment. In the middle, you see Professor Koshiba. As I mentioned, he received Nobel Prize in Physics in 2002 for the observation of neutrinos in Kamiokande. Well, in fact, behind Professor Koshiba, there are 4 relatively young people, including myself. They were the key persons for the construction of the Kamiokande experiment. We stayed in Kamioka, this area, for several months just to construct the detector. Well, what we did was like this. This photo shows the construction of the Kamiokande experiment. I said Kamiokande was 16 meters high, and we had to install the photodetectors onto the inner surface of the tank. So we thought, what would be the way to install the photodetectors at the 60-meter high location? Well, if you drop from 60-meter high, you're dead. So we wanted to avoid that problem. And therefore, we decided to use this plastic boat. Well, certainly, maybe the working condition may not be so great, but even if you drop from the boat, you do not die. So we thought it's okay. Anyway, for several months, we worked this way. And in fact, I enjoyed these works very much. Also, I was excited because I thought that the data from Kamiokande may contribute to physics much. So around that time, I decided to become a physicist, seriously. Well, of course, we wanted to observe proton decays. Unfortunately, the proton lifetime was longer than expected. Therefore, we were unable to observe proton decays. Instead, we observed background events that are neutrino interactions. And here, I want to tell you how the neutrinos are created. Well, you may know that there are particles coming to the Earth, high energy particles. They are called cosmic rays. And these cosmic rays are indeed high energy particles. Many of them are protons, some of them are helium nuclei, or in some cases, even iron is coming to the Earth. Anyway, these cosmic ray particles, once enter into the atmosphere, they interact with the air nucleus. And typically, pions are produced by these interactions. And pions are unstable particles, decay to other particles. And during these decays, neutrinos are created. And these neutrinos, most of them simply pass through the Earth. But sometimes, these neutrinos come to the Kamiokande detector and interact in the water tank. And therefore, at that time, the neutrino interaction emits some charged particles, and these charged particles emit photons. Therefore, these photons are detected by the Kamiokande detector. And they look like, in a sense, proton decays. Therefore, these are serious background to the proton decay searches. Now, I want to talk about our history around 1986. That was 3 years after the start of the Kamiokande experiment. Even in 1986, we still wanted to observe proton decays. But by that time, we observed many, more than 100 neutrino interactions. Therefore, we think it's very important to separate the proton decay signals from the neutrino background very efficiently. Therefore, I developed new software to improve the proton decay analysis. Of course, if you have a new software, you have to check this software as much as you can. There are many bugs. Therefore, we have to be very careful about the check of the new software. Anyway, we did various tests. And as a kind of final test of the new software, the neutrino type, that means electron neutrinos or muon neutrinos, was studied for the atmospheric neutrino events observed in Kamiokande. Then we found that the number of muon neutrino events was much fewer than expected. Well, this was the test of the new software, and we wanted to confirm the software works as expected. And clearly, the result indicated the result of the analysis does not agree with the expectation. And that means there must be some problem in the new software. So we thought that it's very likely that there was some mistake somewhere in the data analysis or new software. And therefore, we have to find out what was the problem in the analysis. And therefore, we started various studies to find out the mistakes. Well, we worked extremely seriously, but even after 1 year of studies, we didn't find any serious mistake. So, after about 1 year of studies, we concluded that the missing muon neutrinos cannot be due to any major problem in the data analysis. And therefore, we decided to report our data to the physics community. And we wrote a paper, a simple paper. Essentially, we reported the number of muon neutrino events observed. That was 85, and compared with the expectation, that was more than 140. So clearly, we feel much fewer events than expected. In addition, we counted the number of electron neutrino events and compared with the expectation. For electron neutrinos, the observation and the expectation agreed reasonably well. That's all we reported. Well, this was a simple paper, simply reported the number of events observed. But the physics community was rather skeptical. People thought there must be some mistakes somewhere in Kamiokande analysis. Well, but let me tell what I thought around that time. Well, first of all, we worked on this problem for more than 1 year. Therefore, we thought it's very unlikely that we had some mistakes. On the other hand, we had no clear idea what was the cause of the missing neutrinos. But anyway, I was most excited with the data. So around that time, I changed my research completely from proton decay searches to neutrino studies to study what are going on in neutrinos. Well, as I mentioned, around that time, physicists were rather skeptical, but I was actually most excited with the data. I really concentrated on this neutrinos to know what's going on neutrinos. Well, I said we had no clear idea what's going on. However, in fact, well, to be honest, I want to say from the beginning, we have been thinking that maybe the missing neutrinos is due to neutrino oscillations. Well, neutrino oscillations were predicted theoretically more than half a century ago. Anyway, according to theorists, if neutrinos have mass, neutrinos change their type from one type to the other. For example, as shown here, a muon neutrino generated in the left corner begin to propagate to the right. Then at some point, the muon neutrino change to tau neutrino. But if this neutrino continue to propagate, then the neutrino type come back to muon neutrinos, then tau neutrinos, and so on. This is neutrino oscillations. And if this is happening in neutrinos produced by cosmic rays, we can easily explain why we observed fewer muon neutrinos. Well, okay, I would say this was an interesting idea. But there are several other possibilities you can imagine. Therefore, we thought at least we would like to separate neutrino oscillation possibility and other possibilities. And for that, we thought this way. As I said, neutrinos are created by cosmic ray interactions in the atmosphere. Therefore, these neutrinos are created everywhere in the atmosphere of the Earth. Some of the neutrinos are created above the detector, maybe 10 to 20 kilometers above the Kamiokande detector. And these neutrinos come to the detector after traveling 10 to 20 kilometers. Maybe 10 to 20 kilometers could be short. Therefore, these neutrinos may not have time to change their type. On the other hand, neutrinos are also created in the other side of the Earth. And these neutrinos must travel long distance before interacting in Kamiokande. And therefore, these neutrinos coming from the other side of the Earth may change their type while propagating in the Earth. Okay, if we think this way, we can conclude that an asymmetry of up versus down-going flux of muon neutrinos should be observed. So this is a simple conclusion. However, it was not easy to observe this effect in Kamiokande because Kamiokande 3,000-ton detector was too small to see this kind of effect. In Kamiokande, the number of events we could observe was limited. Therefore, it was not possible to observe this effect. And therefore, we needed much larger detector to have enough number of events. And therefore, we needed super Kamiokande. Now, I want to move on to the discovery of neutrino oscillations. Well, first of all, I want to introduce the super Kamiokande detector. It is, in fact, a very large neutrino detector. It has about 40 meters in diameter and 40-meter height. And it contains 50,000 tons of pure water. Well, I show a photo of the super Kamiokande in the right. And you see there are 3 people on a plastic boat. And the detector itself is this big. So you indeed find super Kamiokande is very large. Now, at present, we have about 230 collaborators from 11 countries. So this is a large international collaboration. Well, before talking about the results from Super Kamiokande, I want to show this slide. This photo was taken in the spring of 1995 when we constructed the Super Kamiokande detector. As in the case of Kamiokande, of course, we had to construct the detector. Therefore, physicists in the Super Kamiokande collaboration came to Kamioka and worked in underground to construct the Super Kamiokande detector. In fact, we worked in underground for about a year. So this photo was taken when we constructed the super Kamiokande detector? Well, indeed, the construction work was successful, and we started the experiment on April 1st, 1996, about 1 year from that photo. Anyway, from the beginning of the experiment, we continuously observed neutrino interactions, neutrino events. And this is one of the neutrino events observed in super Kamiokande. We see this kind of pattern of light emitted by a particle, and this particle was created by neutrino interaction. So, super Kamiokande observes about 10 neutrino events in a day, and many collaborators study these events as a team. And well, I think we are indeed very successful in analyzing the data. And after 2 years from the start of the experiment, we were able to announce a significant result. And here I copied a slide we showed at the conference, neutrino conference in 1998. By the way, so far, I gave my talk in PowerPoint, but maybe you do have no idea. But in the 20th century, we didn't have PowerPoint. So, well, we copied our data to the transparent plastic sheet and wrote down several comments and showed to the audience using the so-called overhead projector. Anyway, of course, I have a reason to show this slide. This was very important. Let me explain what is written here. In particular, the lower panel is very important. So let's concentrate on the lower panel. Here, the horizontal axis shows the neutrino arrival direction. 1 means downgoing neutrinos, and -1 means upward-going neutrinos. And the vertical axis is number of neutrino events observed and compared with the expectation. So, for downgoing neutrinos, you see the data and the expectation agreed quite well. But for upward-going neutrinos, they came from the other side of the Earth. The observed number of events was about half of the expectation. Okay, so that was the data. And clearly, the data and the expectation does not agree for upward-going neutrinos. And this can be easily explained if you assume neutrino oscillations, namely muon neutrinos created in the other side of the Earth begin to propagate, then the neutrino type changed to tau neutrinos, muon neutrino, tau neutrino, muon neutrino, and so on. Therefore, when these neutrinos come to the super Kamiokande detector, the probability that a muon neutrino remain as muon neutrino is just 50%. So, indeed, this way, super Kamiokande collaboration was able to convince the neutrino community that neutrinos oscillate or neutrinos change their type. Well, of course, as scientists, we we reported this result at the conference for physicists, but I think we were surprised by President Clinton's talk at MIT's 1998 commencement. Well, the length of the talk was about 30 minutes, and in the middle of his talk, he mentioned about the discovery of neutrino oscillations. So let me simply wrote down what he said. He said, just yesterday in Japan, physicists announced a discovery that tiny neutrinos have mass. Now, that may not mean much to most Americans, but it may change our most fundamental theories from the nature of the smallest subatomic particles to how the universe itself works, and indeed how it expands. Then he talked about the US contribution to Super Kamiokande. Then he continued, the larger issue is that these kinds of findings have implications that are not limited to the laboratory. They affect the whole of society, not only our economy, but our very view of life, our understanding of our relations with others, and our place in time. So I think the Super Kamiokande collaboration was really honored to hear this kind of remark from the US president on the next day of our discovery announcement. Okay, well, before moving on to the next topic, I want to mention a little bit about this discovery. First of all, it took us more than 10 years to conclude that the data show neutrino oscillations. But we think that we were lucky because we got the conclusion rather quickly. We think 10 years is rather quick. Well, in the next section, I'm going to talk about solar neutrino oscillations. But in case of solar neutrinos, from the discovery of the problem to the understanding of neutrino oscillations, it took more than 30 years. So 10 years is rather short, we think. And also, please note that there are many things, not only in research, but also in many jobs, that takes a long time to get the conclusion. So anyway, in addition, I want to say the importance of teamwork. We work together in Super Kamiokande to come to this conclusion. And the teamwork is typically very important to accomplish difficult things. And finally, I want to mention about the importance of pure science that expands the horizons of the knowledge. Okay, now I'd like to move on to the discovery of solar neutrino oscillations. First of all, let me introduce solar neutrinos and solar neutrino problem. Well, as you know, the sun generates energy by nuclear fusion processes, and neutrinos are created by these processes. Therefore, the observation of solar neutrinos is very important to understand the energy generation mechanism in the sun. Therefore, people try to observe solar neutrinos. And indeed, the homestake experiment shown here observed solar neutrinos for the first time. And in fact, Ray Davis received Nobel Prize in Physics in 2002 for the observation of solar neutrinos. However, there was a problem. The observed event rate was only about 1/3 of the prediction. This was known since the end of the 1960s, and this is called missing solar neutrino problem. And in fact, during the 20th century, there were several experiments that successfully observed solar neutrinos, but all these neutrino experiments observed missing solar neutrinos. And unfortunately, we were unable to understand what's going on solar neutrinos. Then, the snow experiment gave us a very clear answer to the solar neutrino problem. Snow experiment is also a very large detector, neutrino detector, and it contained 1,000 tons of heavy water, D2O. And well, you see, in the right, you see a large flask. This is, in fact, a container for 1,000 tons of heavy water. And they observed solar neutrino interactions within this heavy water. Well, anyway, there was a reason to use heavy water instead of normal water. Here, I show the result from the snow experiment. If they use heavy water, it is possible to observe the total neutrino flux, independent of the neutrino type. Then they found that the total solar neutrino flux is just as expected. In addition, the snow experiment can observe electron neutrinos, how many electron neutrinos come to the Earth. Then, in this case, the observed flux was about 1/3 of the expectation. Since the sun can only generate electron neutrinos, it was a clear evidence that solar neutrinos oscillate. So this way, we understood that solar neutrino problem was due to neutrino oscillations. Anyway, the world neutrino community was very excited with the discovery of neutrino oscillations or the discovery of small neutrino mass. And since then, there have been many, many neutrino experiments that try to observe neutrino oscillations to understand neutrino mass better. So this is a list, maybe a partial list of neutrino oscillation experiments. So you see, there have been many very large-scale neutrino experiments in the last 25 years. So really, the world neutrino community has been really excited with the neutrino mass. Okay, now, so far, I talked about the discovery of neutrino oscillations. Well, I said we were excited with the small neutrino mass. But you may wonder, why physicists were so excited with the neutrino mass? Well, in fact, I'd like to convince you that indeed small neutrino mass is very important. Here, I plotted the mass of quarks and charged leptons. Well, electron is one of the charged leptons. In addition to electrons, there are two other charged leptons. They are shown by red colors. in proton or neutron, there are quarks, and quarks are fundamental particles. Well, there are 6 types. We know that there are 6 types of quarks, and we know the mass of these quarks, and the quark mass are shown by blue and green colors. Horizontal axis is the mass. Now, in the last 25 years or so, studies of neutrino oscillations or neutrino mass, now we understand the neutrino mass rather well. So I'd like to plot the neutrino mass here. And the neutrino mass are here. So first of all, you find that neutrino mass was plotted in a bit different place on this plot. Well, okay, that's true. And please be careful about the horizontal axis. And from this, you can easily find that the neutrino mass is approximately, or maybe more than, 10 billion times smaller than the corresponding mass of quarks and charged leptons. So 10 billion times smaller than the other particles' mass. Very small, extremely small, and therefore we believe this is the key to better understand elementary particles and the universe. In fact, if we understand why neutrino mass are so small, we certainly understand particle physics better, but we think the neutrino mass is related to the understanding of the universe. Why? Well, maybe for this part, you heard from Professor Murayama. Anyway, let me repeat. So this is a photo taken by the Subaru telescope in Hawaii. You see many galaxies, and we know that these galaxies are made of matter. We know there's no antimatter galaxy. Well, it is trivial. However, if we think about the history of the universe, we find this conclusion: matter in the universe is not trivial. In fact, 13.8 billion years ago, the universe began with the Big Bang. And the Big Bang universe was extremely hot. And in the extremely hot universe, always particles and antiparticles were created simultaneously. Therefore, in the Big Bang universe, there should have been equal number of particles and antiparticles. Then, with the universe expands and cools down, then it is no more possible to create new particles and antiparticles. Instead, if particles and antiparticles, if a particle and an antiparticle meet and then annihilate, disappear, then you can naively expect there should be no particle, no antiparticle remaining in the present-day universe. Of course, the experimental conclusion is we have only matter particles. Why? In fact, we do not know what happened. But anyway, there's an interesting idea, theoretical idea, that neutrinos with very small mass might be the key to understand this big mystery of the matter in the universe. Okay, well, certainly, this is a very interesting idea. First of all, we know that neutrinos have very small mass. But on the other hand, this is still a theoretical idea, quite interesting, but there could be other possibilities. Therefore, we'd like to know which idea is the correct idea to explain the matter in the universe. Anyway, well, people are excited with this possibility. Therefore, we'd like to test this idea as much as we can. And in fact, we found that the present generation of neutrino experiments are not powerful enough to really understand this problem. We concluded that we need the next generation experiments that are typically much powerful with much larger mass. And well, let me introduce just one example. That is the Hyper-Kamiokande project. In fact, people are trying to construct a very large neutrino detector. It will be about 70 meters in diameter and 70 meters high. And it will be about 8 times larger in mass than Super Kamiokande. Well, in fact, I'd like to show this photo. This photo shows that excavation has completed on July 31st this year, 3 days ago. So, from now on, people would like to construct a detector in this very large underground cavity. Well, in fact, it's very large. The diameter is about 69 meters, and the height from the bottom to the top is 94 meters. I think this is the largest underground cavity, artificial cavity. Anyway, about 600 researchers from 22 countries are going to work in Hyper-Kamiokande, and the experiment will start in 2028. So I think the neutrino experiment will continue to be very important in the future. Sorry. Finally, I want to talk about my recent research. Well, so far, I discussed neutrino physics. However, I changed my research from neutrinos to gravitational waves. Let me tell why I changed my research. First of all, I studied neutrinos for many years, more than 20 years, which is a long time. After the discovery of neutrino oscillations, and after some more studies of several more years, I was feeling that I finished what I should do in my neutrino research. Of course, I discussed today. There are many important topics in neutrino research still, but I was feeling that I did my contribution. On the other hand, there were still many exciting things that we did not know. In particular, gravitational waves had not yet discovered at that time, around 2005. And I was fascinated by the research on gravitational waves and the studies of the universe with gravitational waves. And personally, in 2008, I became the director of the Institute for Cosmic Ray Research. And well, in fact, as the director, it was clear that I could no longer contribute to neutrino research much. I had to spend much time on the institute itself. But still, I wanted to be involved in exciting research. Therefore, I decided to participate in the gravitational wave project, which is called Kagura, with my partial time. So, since then, I have been working on the Kagura project, which is a gravitational wave project with a very large laser interferometer. Arm length is 3 kilometers by 3 kilometers. And it's a very complicated equipment. Anyway, since that time, I have been working on this project. And in fact, well, although I'm working on this project, we are working together with the global gravitational wave community. Here, I show the map of the gravitational wave laser interferometers in the world. And in fact, we have been working together. By the way, you may wonder why you work together rather than competing each other. Well, we think it's very important to work together because, well, even if you have a very good laser interferometer to observe gravitational wave, it is not possible to know from where the gravitational waves come. In order to know from where these gravitational waves come, you need to have at least 3 gravitational wave detectors which are far apart from each other. Then, since the gravitational waves come with the speed of the light, then by observing the wave arrival time, we can estimate from where the signal came. And this is very important to advance the gravitational wave astronomy. We have to work together with the optical telescope community. So, LIGO, Virgo, Kagura work together. Namely, we are observing gravitational waves simultaneously, sharing the data and analyzing the data as a team. And I want to tell you that Kagura joined the observation from June this year. So it's a very exciting time. Okay, well, let me summarize my talk. In 1998, Super Kamiokande discovered neutrino oscillations, which showed that neutrinos have mass. And non-zero neutrino mass is a key to understand the smallest subatomic particles and the universe better. And finally, I want to say that science is exciting, and I hope that you'll become scientists. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kajita. And today, I think we have learned a lot about neutrinos. And you can also learn from Professor Kajita that how to do a world-class research, right? And from his talk, you can also see that Professor Kajita and his team proved something that no one had been able to confirm before, that neutrinos actually have mass, okay? And of course, this contradicts to the standard model, which assumed that neutrinos were massless. And I do hope that in the near future, most of you can do a great science like him, okay? Please give a big thank to Professor Kajita again. Okay, now we have about 20 minutes for questions and comments. And okay, you have the role already. So we start from the lady first, okay? Please.
Hello, my name is Noya, I'm from Israel. So lots of your findings remain unpredictable. the expected number of neutrinos of a certain flavor in the Kamiokande chambers, and then comparing that to the actual found amount. So my question is, given how rare and sporadic these occasions are, I mean, these occasions are very spontaneous of the neutrino collisions. So how can you calculate the expected amount?
Thank you. Yes. In fact, it's very important to know how we calculated the expected number of neutrino events. Well, in order to know the expected number of events, we have to know how many neutrinos come to the detector and how frequently these neutrinos interact with matter. And also we need to know the details of the neutrino interactions. But anyway, by that time, well, to be honest, I have to say that how many neutrinos come, that has the largest uncertainty. We only knew with an accuracy of about 30%. And how frequently neutrinos interact? Well, we knew rather well. Maybe we understood within, say, an uncertainty of about 10%. So, thinking about these uncertainties, we find uncertainties are rather big, large. However, there was a reason that we got very serious about the data, because we knew that essentially two muon neutrinos come for every one electron neutrinos. Therefore, we knew the ratio of muon neutrino to electron neutrinos quite well. Maybe the uncertainty was about 5%. So, in the data, I showed that there was a significant missing muon neutrinos, but on the other hand, we had a good agreement for electron neutrinos, expectation and data. That was the point. We knew mu to E ratio very well. Therefore, we thought this was a very serious problem.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so maybe from this side, please, the gentleman.
So, hello, Professor. I'm Yogesh from Nepal, and thank you for your presentation. So, my first question is, how did you distinguish between the muon neutrinos and the electron neutrinos? And my second question is, during your Super Kamiokande analysis, did you not observe any oscillations from the electron neutrinos? And if it's no, then do they have no mass?
Okay, well, the first question is, how can we distinguish electron neutrinos and muon neutrinos,
Yes.
right?
How
Okay.
did you do it at that time?
Thank you for this question. It's very important. Well, in fact, if a muon neutrino comes, then the produced charged particle is called muon. If an electron neutrino comes, then the produced particle is an electron. Okay, so there is a difference, muon and electron. And in fact, the propagation of a muon and the propagation of an electron is quite different in water or in any material. Muons typically simply go straight. But electron, in fact, due to a rather small mass, they have a very different behavior in water. Electrons typically emit gamma rays, and gamma rays are converted to electron and positrons, and these particles again emit gamma ray and converted to electrons and positrons. So immediately, a single electron are converted to many particles propagating. So there is a significant difference in the particle propagation in the water. And by analyzing the light pattern observed in super Kamiokande, we can very efficiently separate muon and electron neutrinos. About the second question, I forgot.
Like, in your super Kamiokande analysis, like, were there no oscillations from the electron neutrinos? And if it's no, do they have no mass at all? Like, do they travel at this?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this question. Well, in fact, in the studies of neutrinos created by cosmic rays, since the effect is really dominated by muon-neutrino oscillations, it's very difficult to observe neutrino oscillations involving electron neutrinos. However, we have another experiment going on. I didn't have time to talk about this experiment, but, well, in fact, in super Kamiokande, we observe neutrinos produced by accelerators. It is possible to produce neutrinos by using accelerators. And in fact, by observing the neutrinos produced by accelerators, we observe that some of the muon neutrinos oscillate to electron neutrinos. And therefore, we can easily say that electron neutrinos are indeed involved in neutrino oscillations. Furthermore, super Kamiokande, we also observe electron neutrinos from the sun. And from these data, as I showed, we conclude that electron neutrinos are involved in the neutrino oscillations. And therefore, at present, we think that all types of neutrinos have mass.
Okay, thank you,
Okay,
sir.
please ask only one question, okay? Because we have a limit of time. Please.
Hello, Professor. My name is Ponggon from Thailand. I want to ask about, like, when neutrino oscillates, it changes flavor from one to another, which has different masses. Wouldn't that affect its momentum?
So is your question about the...
The changing in mass of the flavor.
Okay, thank you. In fact, it's a very profound question. In fact, neutrinos change their type while propagating, but neutrinos do not change their mass, first of all. Well, it's a very complicated thing. You need to know quantum mechanics. In fact, well, let me talk about this a little bit. Well, and still simplified. Say, when we talk about muon neutrinos, in fact, it is possible to define neutrinos in different way. It is possible to define neutrinos in mass. So that means, in fact, muon neutrino is a kind of combination of two mass states, say second mass and third mass of neutrinos. So combination of these two neutrino mass states. And when we say muon neutrinos propagate, that means two mass states propagate coherently. But these two mass states have different mass. Therefore, the way of the propagation should be different. That means after some time, there should be some difference from the initial state. And that means the neutrino flavor should change at some point. So these neutrinos do not change their mass, and also the momentum is always a constant.
Thank you very much.
Please.
Hello, Professor. I'm Aryan Cholagai from Nepal. And my question to you is that given the non-zero mass of neutrinos, do you think there's a possible unification pathway between them and dark matter particles like axions or WIMPs?
Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Well, good question. However, what we found was although neutrinos have mass, but as far as the known three types of neutrinos are concerned, their mass, the sum of the three types of neutrino mass, are too small to be the major part of the dark matter. So we still have to find out what are dark matter particles.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Please take.
Okay. Hello, Professor. I'm Thanachol from Thailand. As my field of interest is in computer science, and I would like to ask you that, have you ever think about using AI or machine learning? Have you ever think about using AI and machine learning with super Kamiokande or hyper Kamiokande to find some relativity or something that can reveal the secret of neutrinos?
Well, okay, so let me confirm. You want to know how we use machine learning?
I want to know that, like, have you ever think about to use AI or machine learning to studying about neutrino? Yes.
Thank you. In fact, yes. In some data analysis, we use machine learning technology. For example, well, today I showed the discovery of muon neutrino oscillations, and muon neutrinos should oscillate to tau neutrinos. But if this idea is correct, we should observe tau neutrinos, which are generated by neutrino oscillations. However, the observation of tau neutrinos is, well, at least in super Kamiokande, is extremely difficult. There are many backgrounds with similar event patterns. Then we tried many methods, but finally we found machine learning technology is the best one to achieve this goal, finding out tau neutrinos. Indeed, well, maybe about 10 years ago, we finally had the evidence that we observed tau neutrinos in super Kamiokande.
Thank you.
Okay, next question, please, from the lady.
My name is Indy, and I'm from Thailand. You mentioned about how neutrinos can oscillate between types over time. Could it ever use them to measure cosmic distances, like a kind of quantum ruler for the universe?
Say again, sorry.
I'm sorry, okay. If neutrinos can oscillate between types over time, could we ever use them to measure the cosmic distances, like a kind of quantum ruler for the universe?
Okay, thank you very much for this question. Well, what we discussed today is the typical distance of the diameter of the Earth, or between Sun and the Earth. So compared with these distances, cosmic distance is much larger. Therefore, to be honest, I have no idea this could be related to physics with the cosmic distance.
All right, thank you.
Hello, Professor. My name is Chani from South Korea. And would you explain briefly why observation of neutrino oscillations supports the fact that neutrino has mass?
Thank you very much. Okay, let me answer to your question this way. Well, I don't want to go into detail of the neutrino oscillations, I want to discuss in a general way. You know relativity. Well, according to Einstein, if a particle propagates with high speed, then the clock of this particle slows down, you know. And finally, if the particle speed reaches to the speed of the light, then the clock of the particle stops. Now, if the clock stops, then, of course, by definition, it is not possible to change the particle type.
Okay, I see.
Okay?
If there's no mass, yeah, I see. Thank you.
Okay. Because we have a limit of time, maybe we can take maybe 2 more questions. Is that okay? You can also ask the speaker during the lunchtime. Okay? I'm sorry about that. Maybe, okay. You are the next one, and also the last guy over there. Okay, please.
Okay. My questions here is that there is like cameo candidate experiment, right? I want to know what's the difference between cameo candidate experiment and the Juno experiment in China.
Thank you very much for this question. Well, in fact, the Juno experiment is the new generation of experiment, which is just going to start the data taking. So, in fact, there are several differences. In Super Kamiokande, we use pure water, but Juno use liquid scintillators. Well, in liquid scintillator, particle emit photons, light, much more than the photons emitted in water. That means it is possible to observe lower energy neutrinos. In particular, Juno is trying to observe neutrinos created by nuclear power reactors. And by the precise measurement of the neutrinos from the nuclear power stations, they would like to know, well, I didn't talk about this, but anyway, they would like to know which neutrino mass state is the heaviest. In fact, I assumed that this particle must be the heaviest, but actually we do not know. So this is a very important question, and we expect that Juno will tell us which is the heaviest particle.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So next one is the last question from student, please.
Hello, my name is Naomi. I'm from Israel, and I wanted to ask, given that the mass of the neutrino is very small, and it's not a likely candidate for dark matter because the mass is small, which avenues of research do you think are most important to solve the issue of dark matter and dark energy right now?
Thank you very much. First of all, well, to me, dark energy is much more difficult to know what are the origin of the dark energy. I have no idea. Well, dark matter, well, in fact, in the community, there are more than several possibilities. And, well, we do not know which of the possibilities is the right direction. Therefore, we still have to try to find out dark matter evidence by various methods. Well, I don't know which one we should try anyway. Well, At this moment, we do not know much about the dark matter particles. So we should try as many possibilities as possible at this moment.
Thank you.
Okay, I think maybe it's just about the time, but I also have one last question from me as well, okay? You mentioned during the construction of the Kamiokande detectors in 1983, you mentioned that I enjoy this work very much. Also, I was excited because I thought that the data from the Kamiokande may contribute to physics much. Around that time, I decided to become a physicist. I'm not quite sure whether is this about the inspiration or not. So my question is that, what is the most important thing to become a great scientist?
Thank you for this question. Well, I think it's very important that you are interested in science. Then, well, I think the scientific research is interesting. Therefore, I think you can become scientist.
Thank you very much. Please give a big hand to Professor Kajita again for his excellent talk.